Thank you for watching. Today we're looking at the third generation of the Axial SCX10. I'm still really bad at muting my shit. Thank you so much for watching. Today we're looking at the Axial SCX10 version 3. It's pretty amazing to think that we're already looking at the third generation of this super popular truck, and this is popular for a reason. Ever since this came out, people really didn't think that going slow would be this much fun, but the hobby, like all the supporters of the hobby, quickly picked up on it. The aftermarket quickly picked up on it. Other brands kind of hopped on board using this footprint as like the main layout to develop their own versions of a 10 scale trail truck, a 10 scale RC crawler, scaler, whatever you want to call it. Seeing that this is where we are today, I think it is really amazing because this thing is so packed with features. So we've seen other brands doing stuff like, for example, adjustable length frame, portal axles, 2 speeds. This thing kind of has it all. So this latest version of the Axial SCX10 packs, for example, stainless steel pivot ball, 6mm links. It has a full interior. It has an internal roll cage. It has a ton of stuff to deck out the exterior as well, so that the Jeep JLU body, you can really dress that up, make it look really pretty with, for example, door handles, windshield wipers, mirrors, that type of stuff. The only thing that will really look familiar, I think, by looking at the front of the box, are those KMC machete wheels and those Nitto Trail Grappler tires, because we've seen those previously on the Wraith 1.9 and also in black. We've seen these wheels on the CRC Jeep, which was the Axial SCX10 version 2. This third generation being so jam-packed with features, not just by the looks of it, but also that deep down, like technically, with, for example, dig and a 2-speed and whatnot. It will be a lot of fun to put this together. Now, if you don't want to put it together, I saw that Axial has just announced that they will also release a ready-to-run of this exact truck. So with that Jeep JLU body painted in like a gray, so it almost looks a tiny bit in gray tone, like for example the Cherokee that they previously had with the Axial SCX10 version 2. I think for now enough yip yap. I will be adding, of course, my own electronics. I already have some Spectrum micro servos to add to this build. Apart from that, I'm going to drop in a castle system. Not sure which servo I'm going to use yet. I think I should just dive into this, assemble it, put it together, enjoy the process immensely as always, and have a good look at it before I start painting the body, which I will do in the next video. But I'm really curious to see what this thing actually looks like in person. Well, there you have it. It is all built. Was this an easy truck to put together? I don't really think so. I would not qualify this as a beginner truck unless you perhaps have a degree in engineering or whatnot. Well, thank God, you know, they came up with the ready to run. So you will be able to have fun with that if you're completely new to the hobby. I think Axial has sort of like really catered to the audience that they already have as well. So if you are familiar with the brand and you already have a couple of their trucks, perhaps you have the very first SCX10, perhaps you have the version 2, perhaps you have, I don't know, an Exoterra or whatnot, you will be excited, I think, by seeing what you will find in this box, seeing that there is so much stuff included and that there are so many features on this truck. Now you will see that I have built it, but it is not fully complete. So for example, the fender flares, some of the body accessories, those aren't on, just because I don't want the hassle of having to take those off immediately right after I'm done shooting this video, because I will be painting this body up right after this is done actually. So I went ahead and just put the main stuff on, so you have a bit of an idea. Put the cage in there, the driver figure in, put all the body mounts in it also, so I have a bit of an idea of where you perhaps run into an issue, and then I basically left it at that. So let's dive into the chassis. Let's just see what I found there, what I came across. Perhaps it is different in your case if you start building one of these, but these are my first observations when it comes to this chassis. Now, those axles, of course, they are portal axles as mentioned, and also as depicted on the box. The portal boxes actually are pretty compact on the inside of the pinion gear. So it is a high entrance pinion, again, just to give you the maximum amount of clearance if you start rock crawling this thing. On the inside of that pinion gear you will find there's an oversized ball bearing, and then well, full ball bearings throughout. If you assemble the rear axle, I saw people with assembling the Capra as well, sort of like asking questions about if there was a bearing missing or not. There isn't. There is already an internal bearing which carries your stub axle, to put it like that, and there is only one bearing on the outside carrying it and then transferring the rotation over through your portal box into your wheel. So don't worry about that, you're not missing anything. There are some parts in the instructions perhaps where you need to study it a tiny bit closer, because stuff goes behind other stuff that truly applies to the transmission case. But apart from that, you should not have any problems putting this together if you are like a tiny bit of a seasoned hobbyist. Now moving on to the shocks. Hard anodized shock bodies, really high quality looking. Assembling these shocks really easy, especially considering that there's a bleeder cap supplied with. Just make sure not to over tighten the screw in the bleeder cap, because you will strip it out. Another thing to note, I think, are the spring perches. So in the very bottom of the shock you will see that there is a perch which is held in place with a little screw. We have seen those previously already on the SCX10 version 2. So this clamp style perch makes sure that when you have an uncompressed shock, and usually your perch would like be able to float a tiny bit. I think that if you've been in the hobby for a tiny bit, you've all had like at some point a perch gone missing and your shock looking a bit wonky. Now that's something that you don't have to worry about with this shock. Do note that there's two different springs, a red one and a green one. I did not find any instructions on where those should go, or perhaps I overlooked it. So I just winged it. I put the red ones in the back, green ones in the front. Perhaps I need to turn it around. We will see about that. I fit mine with 30 weight shock oil. Comes with a couple of tubes of shock oil actually. So that's I think new for Axial, because you used to get a flask with shock oil, and right now it comes in a little tube. 35 weight is what's supplied with. I went with 30 just because I think that will suit my needs a tiny bit better. Once you start assembling the transmission case, make sure that you really pay close attention, because that one is really a concentration tester. Don't go doing that late in the evening, even if you are a seasoned hobbyist, because you will get it wrong. There's a couple of things that go behind other things, and if you don't study the instructions thoroughly and carefully when assembling that, you will have to backtrack a few steps and do it again, because it won't make any sense once you start fitting stuff together. So that is a thing to note. This is a really complex transmission case. It features DIG, it features a 2-speed, it features a forward mounted motor. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this transmission case that you would usually only find in perhaps aftermarket parts. But in this case, everything is fully included. And I think that is really amazing. That's really pushing the envelope. There's other trucks that have done stuff similar, like fitting a 2-speed immediately right out of the box. But I think they lack in refinement, and it's the same thing goes for the axles with these built-in trusses and whatnot. The quality of this Axial SCX10 version 3 is just on a whole other level, and I think that that's important in this trail truck market. It is so flooded, there's so many options out there, and I do think that Axial has once again raised the bar, which of course makes it interesting, because that's what this whole industry is all about. Raising the bar, making it a tiny bit more exciting for other manufacturers as well, to push the envelope, to try to come in and come up with something new to offer us hobbyists, something that's like a tiny bit more advanced and a tiny bit improved compared to some of the previous versions. This transmission case is really I think a great example of how to do that and of what this industry is about. Now I need to have a look at my notes, just because I know that there's a lot of stuff that I noted during the build of this truck. I'm trying to go through them sort of like as they appear in the instructions, so bear with me over here. The links, it is a 3-link in the front, 4-link in the back suspension setup. So in the front you have actually a really skinny looking panhard. The links, they are 6mm stainless steel. They are directional, so they are easy to adjust. Just keep track of where the markings actually go, so they are actually easier to adjust in case you want to fine-tune things a tiny bit. I think the rod ends are of higher quality than we have seen previously, and also of course the pivot balls being stainless, and that goes for the shocks as well. Everything runs a lot smoother if you would compare it to having plastic pivot balls, which was the case in the past with Axial kits. So seeing stainless steel pivot balls included and also these heavy links, I think is really nice. Really puts this kit on a higher level than anything that we've previously seen. It is a heavy chassis, but all the weight seems to be in all the right places. And I'm really impressed with the way it looks. The frame rails, they actually split. So there's a split behind the skid. So you can adjust the wheelbase of this truck, just like you would in the past have found it on a Vetera Ascender. The Ascender, by the way, got discontinued in favor of this truck. I think by seeing the amount of features that this truck actually offers, that it's still a shame, of course, that the Vetera Ascender is disappearing. But I think that we got a really nice truck to sort of like replace it and to carry over some of those features, like for example those adaptable frame rails. Seeing how well this is hidden behind that skid plate, so you won't notice at first glance that this is actually an adjustable wheelbase. I think that that is also a great feature. The angles on the chassis are a lot sharper. So in the past it would be like a bow going over the front and the rear axle, like if you would have them fully compressed. And in this case it is a more angular looking frame rail. So I guess more inspired on what we have seen in the past from Vanquish with the VS410. They have a pretty angular looking frame rail. The Traxxas also has a pretty angular looking frame rail, and now this Axial SCX10 version 3 also has a pretty angular looking frame rail. Once you start mounting all the shock hoops and all the other stuff to the frame rail, it's also really apparent that some parts, like for example those shock hoops, they have really a lot of nylon. Keep a drill handy, because I needed to sort of like pilot the holes a tiny bit bigger just to get my screws in and not to strip any of the screw heads out. So that is something, I guess, to keep in mind. That's also the only snag, if you want to call it, that I ran into when assembling this truck. The radial box, the axis, pretty easy, has a pretty decent size. You do need to keep in mind that when you fit these Spectrum servos, so these tiny micro servos that are for the 2-speed and also for the dig function, that you do need to have a little servo extender lead, because they just won't fit into the radio box as they are, since they come with a really short wire as it is. I fitted a 1406 from the top of my head, a 2280 kV Castle slate motor in the front, which is completely covered up by this scale looking LS engine. That LS engine, by the way, of course has a full serpentine belt in the front, has radiator that you can see over here. This usually attaches to the body, but just for the sake of demonstration I put it in just so you can have a look. And then if you look at the bottom, I think this is actually pretty cool. There is actually also an oil pan, so it is an extremely detailed kit. You get two different battery trays. You get like a conventional sized battery tray, which is the one that I fitted right in front of the rear axle, or you get this short pack battery tray, which you can fit on the floorboard on the opposite side of the micro servos. In my case, I want to fit my Mamba X ESC over here, so my Castle Creations Mamba X. These are my preferred ESCs for these type of trucks. So I'll be fitting that on the floorboard just because I can't really find any place to fit it on the opposite end, and I really like having the possibility to run a slightly bigger battery pack if I can. Drive shafts, those are familiar looking, so those are the wild bores. No surprises there, I guess, so why change something that actually works really well? So that's another of those parts that actually does look familiar. At first glance, you would also perhaps think that those sliders look familiar, but they don't. They are actually all new. The top part of the slider is like Smithy built inspired. This is something that previously you would be able to order through Night Customs for your CRC Jeep for the Axial SCX10 version 2. I'll make sure that I will include a little close-up of that so you know what I'm talking about. The other part that does look familiar from that CRC Jeep that red one that you could previously buy, are the front and the rear bumper, and that's really where the comparison stops. Wheels and tires are already touched up on before we actually broke into the box. I really like the inner fenders. They also have an option for some rock lights, so you see that the openings are already there. It really closes the truck up very well, so you don't have to worry about any debris entering the body and stuff getting messy, your electronics getting messy. So that as well, seeing all of that included and seeing how refined it is, and I do think that that's like the word that we're looking for to kind of summarize this entire kit, is refined. Everything is refined. If you look at all the details as well that you get with the body, I cannot wait to fit everything, to have it done with the paint, with all the electronics in. Still need to figure out which radio I'm going to run. But Axial, they really knocked it out of the park. If you compare this to some of the other trucks, I think that this is the more refined option. For what this is supposed to be, this is of course not a basher, this is a trail truck. This is something that you want to look scale, you want it to feel great. Yeah, I think this ticks all the boxes. So, seeing that, they had the blueprint, they had the benchmark. I think that they did an amazing job at actually becoming the blueprint again, at setting the bar a tiny bit higher, at becoming once again perhaps the benchmark, at creating a truck that not just the supporters of the brand that they already have will get excited about, but also a truck that the competition will have a really good look at to see where the bar is actually at currently. You got the inner cage, you got the interior panel, you got an amazingly detailed body, you got a chassis that really ticks, for me, it ticks all the boxes. It has all metal gears, it has all ball bearings. There's so much stuff that I could actually touch up on that I could turn this into a 1 hour video with great ease. I had a blast putting this thing together. Like I said, was a fair amount of work. The instructions are really clear. I never use any power drivers to put anything together, just because I want to have like a good feel for how everything fits and how everything goes together. No problems whatsoever. Again, you know, just have a coffee, take a really good look at the instructions, and make sure you don't skip any steps. In the next video, I will be painting up this JLU body. Perhaps you have any tips for what type of paint scheme you would like to see. I do think that it's going to be a bit race inspired. I want to have a couple of colors happening on there, but perhaps you have some suggestions. They're always welcome. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. It's always much appreciated. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the box below, and I will try to get back to you. If you are subscribed, don't forget to hit the bell. If you have not subscribed yet, please do, because it is free, and I hope that I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
We're back on.